This morning on the Sunrise Early News, feeling Alfred's fury. Monster waves, brutal winds and driving rain. The savage assault begins. Moment of impact. The tracking changes again. Where and when it will make landfall. 5-day flood emergency. More suburbs in danger from the slow-moving storm. Lismore facing fresh heartache. Thousands without power, preparing for the worst but hoping for the best. How to protect your home if you're at risk.
Live across Australia, this is Sunrise Early News.
Good morning. As we go to air this morning, Cyclone Alfred is bearing down on the Queensland capital, putting more than 4 million people at risk. The Category 2 monster is stalking the coast, with the latest update from the Weather Bureau placing it just 205 kilometres east of Brisbane. Now, the system has slowed again, but its danger has only increased. At this stage, Alfred is expected to cross the coast early Saturday morning. The latest modelling has Brisbane's northern suburbs up to the Sunshine Coast directly in the firing line of the storm's eye.
If the system crosses the coast, particularly on a high tide, there is the real risk of inundation in those storm tide areas. You need to make a plan, and it is important that you do have a plan in place to deal with that.
Alfred's impact is already far too clear on the southeast Queensland coast and across northern New South Wales. Dangerous winds have toppled trees and damaged buildings, bringing down debris as well. Residents are being warned the risk will only get worse from here.
Increasing to those destructive wind gusts up to 150 kilometres per hour as Alfred approaches the coast. And again, particularly about those exposed areas on the southern side of the track.
More than 15,000 homes have already lost power across Queensland, and fuel deliveries to service stations have now stopped. Schools from Yamba to the Sunshine Coast will remain closed today. The cyclone's delayed arrival has elevated the risk of life-threatening flash flooding and severe damage to homes. More time off the coast means more rain and winds, smashing the suburbs. 2 days of forecast rain has now turned to 5 days. Authorities are bracing for more than $1 billion worth of damage.
These are tough times, but Australians are tough people and we're resilient people. We have activated the Australian Government Disaster Response Plan, a crisis coordination team which will operate out of here.
So Brisbane City Council has added hundreds of more homes to its flood modelling for a storm surge risk. Here are the areas: Brighton, Windsor, Ashgrove, Morningside, Rockley, Coopers Plains, Wynnum West, Sandgate, Carina, Hemmant, Lota, Tingalpa, Indooroopilly, Albion and also Barden. If you were in those areas, please take caution.
I've been through a number of disasters, including the Newcastle earthquake in '89, and I really don't want to be in any more. I'm praying, and all my friends are praying our hearts out that we don't have to go through any more tragedy in our lives.
Now, warning to take shelter now has been issued overnight for the Redland City Island communities. Destructive winds have picked up there this morning already. The latest advice is that emergency services will not be able to get there because it is simply too dangerous. Further south on the Gold Coast, timing will be everything when Alfred finally makes landfall. Now, the best case scenario is that the storm comes ashore at low tide. The worst case sees Alfred crossing on the high tide. Now, that significantly will boost the risk of a huge storm surge. Right now, anything not lashed down is in danger of being swept out to sea. Along the coast, beaches are being carved into sand cliffs, and things are only about to get worse.
If the system crosses at exactly high tide, there is the risk of seeing storm surges up to 1.5 metres, particularly around the Redlands Bay area and the Gold Coast.
Yesterday, a wave rider buoy measured a new record maximum wave height off the Gold Coast of 12.3 metres. Holidaymakers caught in the storm are putting on a brave face.
It's beautiful out there, man. Look at it.
It ruined the holiday.
It's okay here at the moment, but I won't be here tomorrow at this time, I don't think.
Now, Georgie Chumley is at Manly on Brisbane's Bayside for us this morning. Good morning to you, Georgie. What's it like there at the moment as Cyclone Alfred approaches?
Good morning, Eddie. Well, it's actually quite eerily quiet here at Manly. There is a little bit of rain, not much wind at all. We really are being sheltered by the worst effects of Cyclone Alfred from those Bay Islands. But I have just gotten off the phone from the Bureau of Meteorology, and they've said, please do not be complacent. We are going to start seeing destructive winds in this area in Brisbane City from around midday and building overnight. Now, as you mentioned earlier, it really is the storm surge in these bayside suburbs that authorities are concerned about. You heard the Bureau of Meteorology earlier saying if Tropical Cyclone Alfred does cross the coast at high tide, we could see a 1.5 metre storm surge, and that is what low-lying residents are really worried about. We're just in front of the bay here. We've got Manly Boathouse next to us. They've got things tied down. They've got sandbags as well. They really are preparing for the worst. Now, after that storm surge, it's the flooding rain that kicks in. Overnight tonight and into tomorrow, the Bureau is forecasting 24-hour rain totals of in excess of 450 millimetres in some areas. Just incredible. So over coming days, we're going to see those catchments fill up, and that's when we could start to see those suburbs of Brisbane that flooded back in 2022 flood again. Overnight, as you said, we have had some additional suburbs and more areas added to Brisbane City Council flood modelling and storm surge modelling. So certainly one to keep across. If you haven't checked, it's good to check those maps and make sure that your property isn't in the firing line. If you are, you're being urged to stay with family and friends and evacuate as soon as you can. And there are refuge centres that are open as a last resort. Now, as for the dams, well, the gates remain closed. They are not releasing any water from those dams as yet because no major rain has fallen in those catchments of Wivenhoe, Somerset, those other drinking water dams. So that's certainly causing some anxiety among residents around southeast Queensland, Ipswich, Brisbane, the Redlands, who don't know what to expect as we go on. But the message from the Bureau is clear, particularly for residents in Brisbane who haven't experienced those high wind gusts, those crazy seas that we've seen on the Gold Coast. It does seem calm. It's not going to be calm for long. So people are saying to make sure that you are sheltering inside later today. You're taking all the precautions because we are going to see the system hit, and it's going to hit hard.
And as you say, not just 2 days of relentless rain, we're looking at 5 days now. Thank you so much for that, Georgie. And as Georgie said, Brisbane CBD is a ghost town right now, with public transport paused, supermarkets closing, shops in the impact zone are either closed or operating on reduced opening hours. Elective surgeries have been postponed too. Australia Post is pausing deliveries, pickups and processing in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. Roads, bridges and critical infrastructure are being kept open for as long as possible to make sure those critical supplies do continue and those supermarkets can be restocked.
They're organising convoys up to 300 trucks at a time to be able to get through the infrastructure, ensure that there is some supply of those fruit and vegetables that are so important for us all around Australia.
We'll see prices increasing, but it's important to remember that the effect won't just be over the next few days or weeks, it'll be over coming months.
Significant supply chain disruptions and food price rises are expected, with $255 million in agricultural production lost when floods hit the Lockyer Valley west of Brisbane in 2022. Now, Lismore residents have been forced to evacuate from their homes over fears the town and surrounding streets could be in the firing line from massive floods and heavy rainfall. Locals are being urged to either stay with family and friends who are safe from the cyclone's path or go to the evacuation centre that's been set up at Southern Cross University.
It's incredibly important that we minimise the amount of people that need to be rescued in the event of a massive natural disaster.
There are more than 20 evacuation warnings currently in place for areas along northern New South Wales, spanning from Fingal Head right down to Settlement Point, that's near Port Macquarie. Meantime, several towns around the state's northern rivers are also on high alert, ready to uproot their lives at a moment's notice.
If they don't feel safe, then they should think about moving out.
Nearly 20 evacuation centres have been set up at schools, TAFE centres, sports clubs right across northern New South Wales. Travel plans across the country have been thrown into disarray, with Cyclone Alfred grounding flights at multiple major airports in its path, including Brisbane Airport. Hundreds have been left stranded as they struggle to make it back to loved ones in the storm's path, with many flights across Australia into that area disrupted for the coming days.
If something happens, then I'm not there. It's the biggest, disappointment, I guess. I'm not there, the wife's by herself. So, yeah, two kids under 2, which is great.
How long flights will continue to remain grounded remains unknown.